Why isn't it recording?
Maybe you should end just to. You're not recording.
Here he comes now, Andy.
Lisa, will you check to see if that's plugged in? Or hit that button by where the cord is.
How are you? Good.
All right, I got no video. Any idea?
No, I do not have any idea. Talking to, you're illiterate. I don't like computers very well. Well, there you got a red light on. Had a red light.
Yeah.
Nothing's happening here. Does Robin know anything? Oh, is it? That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, because the audio is so bad on Zoom.
Over to the computer, right?
Mhm.
Hold on.
Maybe it only starts at 10.
Yes, I did.
Maybe it only starts at 10.
Came down,
Join audio by computer.
him and the three girls. and his wife.
Victor Owl is
We all
selected
got
in
it
2
for the first time
places.
since my wife passed.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
How do I do that?
He finally came down and spent a night with me.
Where do I do to
They
see?
couldn't do it. They weren't ready yet.
time.
So,
Where
they're not
is
really my
select a
grandkids, But they
microphone?
call me Papa. And, you know, love me and everything. They like.
Where
When they go
where
out,
is
it's
select
40
a
down.
microphone?
So they kind of adopted me, so I went up to their family on Friday.
I'll look for it.
Saturday, I went somewhere too. Not gonna stop.
If you minimize that screen.
Where exactly do you?
No, if you minimize this, would it be on this screen behind it? No, okay.
Okay, we'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pardon? Could I ask her? Yes. Would anyone like to say a blessing?
I will.
Okay.
Lord, we come to do service for our community. Please guide us with your wisdom and lead us in the ways that you would help benefit us the most with the community and the seniors of this community. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Please be with us as we move forward. Amen.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have roll call.
And I think everybody, if you put the mic closer to your mouth, I think it works. I think that's what we're experimenting finds best.
And turn it on.
And have it on. There.
I'm gonna go without because apparently it's interfering with the audio there. That's why we think that we might be having bad audio. Rollin Lynch. Here. Pam McKinnon.
Here.
Phil Potter. Here. Dolores Schlicker.
Here.
Herman Bachhorst. Here. Carolyn Berman.
Here.
Robert Turk. Here.
Okay, we'll have approval of the agenda, and I understand there's a correction or an addition.
We're gonna add the accepting of the resignation of Gary Vanuck. Right, we'll do that right after we approve the agenda.
And you've got 2 set of minutes to approve.
Yeah, and there's 2 sets of minutes that you need to be approved.
It's your.
So we're just adding, accepting Gary's resignation right after we approve the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we do have a letter from Gary Winnock. Do we need to read it, or can we just make a motion to accept it? Does anyone like to make a motion to accept the letter from Gary?
I'll make that motion to accept a letter of resignation from Gary Winnock with regrets.
I will second that with regrets.
Could we have a description of the high points of the letter?
I have it right here. I can read it all,
Okay.
if that'd be easier. Dated November 1st, 2023 to Robert Turek, Secretary, Alcona County Commission on Aging, Secretary Treasurer, resignation of presidency and board member. This is my official notice that I am resigning my office as president along with my membership on the board. There was no coercion or pressure to do so, but there seems to be a point of dispute and our differences are irreconcilable, so it is best for all concerned that I vacate both. It was good working with all on the board at the time, and hopefully you will not have a problem filling both seats. I wish the board the best of endeavors as you proceed with the Lincoln Center and guiding the organization. Gary Vanuck.
So he did not dwell on point of dispute.
No.
Any conversation on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We will accept his resignation and thank him for all of his services that he did to help us out. He was a big help. At this time, we need to elect a new president. And we're open for nominations, and I would like to start by nominating Phil Potter as our new president.
I would second that.
Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Pam.
Pam? Do we have a second to Rollins' nomination?
Well, I'll second Pam. I think she'd be fine as the president.
Okay, so we, Wendy, would you happen to have some papers?
Now, probably all there.
Extra balance in case I want to.
I guess so.
Do we wanna have, Wendy pick them up and count them?
Oh, sorry.
If you're not a voting member, you wouldn't vote for the president.
And that's fine.
Bill Cocker,
Bill?
you president.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Should we switch places or? Okay, okay, I'll let you take over then from here.
First of all, as newly elected president, I told everybody when I got on the board that I'd probably be the most transparent person you'll ever meet. You know, I don't hold in secrets. There's things I can tell you and things I can't tell you. And if I can't tell you that, I'll say, I can't tell you. I don't beat around the bush. I'm straightforward. And I'll do the best job I can do. I'll continue to meet with everybody like I have in the past. I usually go down and see the new senior center once or twice a week and bother Andy. But it's just for learning. I will do the best I can, that's all I'm gonna tell you. And if there's any squabbles or anything that you'd like to discuss with me afterwards, I would be more than happy to sit down and listen to you. That's just the way I am. So with that, thank you very much for the vote of confidence, and we'll move on to approval of minutes. Everybody has the minutes in front of them.
November's.
October should be in the packet.
It's in the packet.
Bill, turn on your mic.
Everybody else always told me I was loud enough. They always told me I was loud enough, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know you know.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for the October 24th meeting.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. Alterations of the rules for public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. Name and township, please, if you would, and stand.
Don't we have to accept these?
Yeah, it's not on the agenda. Yeah. That should be.
Yeah, up and approve the minutes. It didn't get put in your packet, but we need to approve the minutes for the November 1st special board meeting also.
Okay. When it said approval of minutes for the October 24th regular and November 1st special meeting, I was under the assumption that we were doing both on the agenda. So we did approve the October 24th and the November 1st. If there's any discussion on that, I would entertain it, but that's what it says for approval of minutes. So I believe that November 1st has already been approved. We'll go back down to public comment. Is there any public comment on the floor? No?
I just wanted to speak that at the last meeting, we kind of set rules regarding public comment, meaning public comment should be something that's only on the agenda. I would like to revisit that. I frankly myself wasn't really paying close enough attention to that, didn't really consider. In the year that I've been on the board, I haven't seen anybody that's abused that and been talking about the Middle East or the border. I would like to change the rules of public comment to anybody can comment on whatever they want. I haven't seen that being a problem at all. So I would make that motion that we rescind that basically back to how it has been. If you want to talk, you've got your 2 minutes.
I like that idea. I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to alter the rules of public comment back the way they were previously, where if you have a comment, you're more than welcome to stand and make that comment. So, the motion was made, seconded, all in favor,
Aye.
all opposed? Pass. Okay. Anybody have any comments? No? Okay. Public comment is closed. We'll go to presentation from Andy Shaw, our construction manager and developer.
How's this? Yeah. Thank you for having me today. And so I'm gonna start off with just a question that I received from Wendy through the auditor. And that was our builder's risk policy says inland marine. And there was a question about, hey, if we're not dealing with the Great Lakes or the water, what's the marine? And so just a quickie on inland marine policy, that just means in from the water. And that just means for our builder's risk policy, which is all risk and all peril. So a lot of commercial policies are written on specific risk or specific peril. And then it has to be either at a place or in a building or something. So we have inland marine policy as the proper one. And that is our builder's risk. So if we, just as an example, let's say we paid for an HVAC unit out of Tennessee, and the moment that goes on the truck, our policy covers that, even though it's not on the site and even though it's not put in place. So just that goes back to the just a little broader explanation on if anyone sees inland marine on our policy, and then the builder's risk policy covers all things that are kind of exist in a physical sense. So at any time a board shows up on our building, or anytime the roofing shows up or anything like that, that's under our builder's risk. And then I have general liability policy. Every single trade has general liability, and then ultimately the ACCOA does. But then that's kind of like a ladder. And so if there were to be any kind of claim, it would start off with the subcontractor and then kind of grow and hopefully never get here. But that's kind of the two. So all things physical, builder's risk, we're insured progressively up to the 12.5 million all the way to the end. So as we buy things and as things are put in place, it just naturally grows to the end. And then our consistent policy. And then I have from Alpena Agency their recommended policy limits. So when we make subcontracts or contracts with any provider, what have you, I utilize the limit recommendations that I got from Alpena Agency. So that's a little synopsis on insurance. Then I just want to start off with a question on permits. So on the residential, we have 8, or senior housing, we have 8 permits. I put those as commercial. And the reason I did that is we're upgrading the overall senior housing to more of an institutional level. We had a good occurrence about 3 weeks ago where we moved structural steel on the remaining portion of the building, about 30,000 square feet, to part of the Nucor pre-engineered building, Nucor Bedcore, and that resulted in a tremendous savings. It was a radical, pushing over $1 million. And so we didn't really give anything up. We've got the same exterior around, same quality, same risk category as far as the building, just a more efficient way to do it. And we had some other savings, not only the tax thing and the interest, but just some purchases that are going, at knock on wood, going well. And so I could see we were looking good, and really, as we were talking about this building being 100 years old, I just made an overall move to upgrade the quality of the senior house. And so that's reflected in almost every single component, but then collectively, we will meet the requirements for commercial grade, if you will, hence the commercial permit. So our 8 permits for the senior housing are commercial permits. And it's not a big difference, but it's significant. And then the end result is you're gonna have a senior house, it's just gonna last longer and withstand abuse for a longer period of time and be more cost effective to operate during that period of time. So that's the permits. Now on the big building, we're probably looking at about March 1st until we obtain our building permit for the overall, 50,000 square foot building. And that is, we need to have a lot of drawings finished. They're all work in progress. And so, just all the way from fire suppression to our final, what are called final building reactions, all of our various building materials. And so what I do on about every 2 to 3 weeks, I send Harry Harvey stops by frequently, but on a 2 to 3 week basis, I send whatever our current updates are to Don Gilman at the Alpena Building Department, which is administering the commercial. And then Harry, I see him all the time, but I give him formal updates about every 2 to 3 weeks. So they have everything we have. They've got our soil reports. They have our preliminary building reactions. We've got a 60-page detailed document from FedCorp, which they have updated. We have in progress foundation drawings and in progress shell drawings, all of which have been submitted to Don Gilman. And I chat with Don about every 2 weeks. So when we actually go for this commercial building permit out in March, it's not going to be a surprise. It's an ongoing process. So basically, we don't need a building permit until we start putting foundations in the ground, and we'll definitely, wouldn't even think of doing that without having a building permit. So that's kind of where the permits stand. Normal things like we're on the storm, that's through our civil engineer. And then we're preparing probably mid-December, we'll have our formal submission to the county health department, which would be septic and well, and we're refining those all the time. And then with gas and electric, we're, again, regular interactions with both consumers and DTE and Charter, and just kind of getting all those come along as we go. So on the shell drawings in the big building, we're about 98% complete for the drawings that we currently have. And those are all these various wall sections and a lot of detail as to what needs to be done. And that lets me get out and bid. So we're bidding glass, for instance, that's a real big contract. We've got the $1.5 million contract, which is the shell, that's all situated. We're getting quotes on the concrete and the foundations. Now they're just preliminary, but they're substantially complete enough for us to get numbers for right now. And those are going out to a number of people. So we'll have plenty of time to let that contract, get all of our shop drawings, very detailed stuff with respect to the rebar and how it's tied and connected. And that'll all be in a critical path standpoint before our steel gets here. So I need to be starting foundations approximately 30 days prior to steel arriving. That's about how that'll all flow. And then on the residential, we have all 8 footings in place. We have 7 of our 8 foundation walls poured. We have two houses that have trusses on. One we'll probably get tomorrow, so we'll be at 3 houses with trusses. And then with John's home maintenance, his guys left, and he just doesn't have anybody. So I bid that around, and it's looking like Can Do is the most likely person's going to win the roofing contract. And then he wants to do 3 roofs at one time, because he's just got a big crew able to come in and to do an 800 square foot house for him. It's a couple-hour operation. So we're trying to give him what it is, house number 2, 3, and 5, and hopefully, Friday or Monday we'll actually have roofs on. We have windows in, on two of the houses, and they'll be coming in, over the next few weeks. So as the roof is finished, I don't like to put my windows in before the roof is on, because they tend to get broken or have a problem. So it's really best to go roof, then our windows, and then our doors, and then we'll have an enclosed shell. So that's residential. And so when you look from an overall big picture standpoint, we're looking really good on the residential. We'll have that, substantially complete coming into March, into April. And the nice thing about that is that one, we won't have traffic going through our site to get back there when they got cranes and everything. And then two, it just takes a big load off, but that'll be substantially complete. And as really I'm gonna need to focus in March through the end of the job, out front of the building, it'll just help with freeing up time, if you will, in that regard. So that's that on the site. Again, everything's still looking right about $1 million. Our storm pipe, let me just pull some numbers real quick. We're about just under $40,000 for all that concrete pipe and catch basins that you see out there. You can, so often in the game, it's your labor cost to install something is about equal to your actual cost of the thing. It doesn't always hold true, but a lot of times it does. And on the storm, it's almost always the case. So it's about 40 grand to put it in, about 40,000 to buy the pipe. Then we'll see how, if we don't have frost in the ground, we'll see what the weather. I've seen a lot of, just my day of doing this, you get cold, it warms up, and so we'll just see what we actually encounter. But then if we have the storm done, which will be about 10 more days, we'll move on to site grade, and then we'd actually put the gravel down on the roads in the parking lot. So that's where the site's coming along. We keep getting bids for asphalt. I'm trying to grab onto a Boland's job where we would be the sub job to that, but that we get the benefit of the lower pricing and what have you. So that's a little thing we're up to. But all in all of our site, our curbs, our sidewalks, those are all easy to estimate and bid kind of things. And so we've got prices in all the site, and still looking round numbers. The overall site cost for the Bain building is $1 million. And then right now, Jonathan is working on little refinements to the floor plan, doing the detailed layouts of bathrooms, the locker rooms and that kind of thing. And then as that relates to all the various windows, what have you. So he hopes to have a set OEM drawings by later this week for the balance of the property. And then he issued a picture or a rendering, but it was a little funky because the computer allows you to set the sun wherever you want, and therefore to cast a shadow wherever you want. And his particular selection of how the shadow got cast kind of made it look like they were different colors when they weren't. They were just basically shadows in the drawing. So I've asked him to kind of redo that, and I'll show that next time. And then so that's the site, and the overall we've got our site drawings about 98% finished with just a couple little adjustments. That's the grades on the asphalt, the exact type and location of sidewalks, and the exactly where the septic and the well is. But all those things are coming. It's been really quite tricky, actually. There's so many setback requirements. And as you kind of put all this stuff together, we've had to do a little wiggling and jiggling to meet every code. But that's about 99% finished. And then, like I say, the drawings for the foundation are coming right along. And that's where we are at the moment. We're looking real good price wise. We're holding about 1.5 million in contingency right now, which is a nice spot to be at this stage in the game. And then we just keep getting everything, for instance, on the interior for all the workout equipment. We're getting Life Fitness, which is just another thing like Matrix Hammers. It's Life Fitness Hammer Strength. So if you're going to a gym, it's just another big company getting prices and layouts from them. Had a real good company for interior for all of the chairs, tables, just all that kind of stuff, and even the really nice wheelie carts. We're getting prices on that, and I think you're gonna be really happy. Really beautiful stuff, and it's going to be quite stunning when you go into the dining area. And if you're looking to have a wedding, I think the first people to have a wedding are just gonna be blown away how beautiful the whole thing is, so. That's about what I have for today.
Are there any questions from the board, to Andy? That could be asked now. I do have one. When we get to the point of the asphalt, would the road on Barlow Road, the turn lane be incorporated with that?
Yeah,
And will we be going to the village or to Guston Township? How would that work out on that?
the turn, like adding a turn lane to Barlow Road. I don't have that in the budget, and that's kind of not on the drawings right now. I'm not sure, like, that's always a little different, to go mess with a public road. I haven't even really investigated that. One of the things by pulling our driveway all the way south was to increase those view lines. And I don't know, so far, I've just seen that you've got such, like, if I'm going north and I'm gonna turn left into the building, people can see you're coming down that hill, they can see and have plenty of time to adjust, even the big trucks for that matter. And then same thing when you're heading south and you're gonna turn right, there's just enough time to see. And then I've just seen for myself, coming and going, that there's always an opening, if you wanna turn left or right, you just wait till traffic clears. And then even during the fair time, quite honestly, it just had to wait a little bit longer, but there was always a good clear time to either make a left or a right. So yeah, we don't have that in the budget, and I haven't put any work to stretch out this turn lane.
I have a question, being that we are nonprofit, did we get our permits waived?
Well, that was investigated by Carolyn early on, and it's not waived, but they have given us a radical reduction. So for instance, on the 8 permits that we got so far, I think it was around 3,200 total for all 8. That real number, if I would have just got that for my own self for 8 houses, probably would have been closer to 30 grand. So even without us really asking, and I was there when Harry was telling Carrie what the numbers were gonna be, they've given us, I mean, in my opinion, close to an 80% reduction, really. And then the same with like Don Gilman, and I just got permits about a year ago. I mean, a building like this should be, 50 grand would not be abnormal. And Don's current price to us is $3,400. So again, and I didn't even ask him, they offered that, and that's gotta be what, a 90+% reduction. So yeah, and the other thing that Don's doing, he's like a free consultant. I call him all the time, and he's just great, he's such a wealth of knowledge, and he doesn't charge us for that, and I think that's not really typical either. So now, so far, both in speed and in their and just how they've been working with us, we couldn't ask for anything better from both Harry Harvey in the office and then Don Gilman in that office. And I did forget something. I was chatting with Dolores, and we were moving away from any kind of tubs, and all of the showers, they'll all be showers that you can get into, and they'll have a seat in the back. And then that was just a thought on a safer way to go. So that's that. And then and then just as a general flow of the entire place, everything is senior friendly. And then there's a next step to ADA, but we're not there, and that would require a whole different, kind of thing. But if we had a tenant that truly handicapped, it's just set up to make some minor modifications so we could accommodate that situation.
I thank you for checking into that too. I encourage all of us to go down and talk to Gary, talk to Andy, and go out and look at the housing, and it's really, really gonna be nice. And any question I ask for him, like this walk-in showers, he follows up on everything and makes you feel like you're part of this program. So I encourage all of us to go down and check it out once in a while.
Yeah, and everyone's always welcome, and we get stoppers by all the time, Brad Cole comes, everyone likes, puts their 2 cents in, but I always have an open mind, so I'm just like, hey, anyone's got a good idea, I take it in, think it over. And even on the generators, when we ended up, getting a price with, Home Depot was the cheapest, $5,543 a generator. So here we are with generators, all in will be 7,000, 7,500. And then building, we got generators in every house, so all those things are good. So, yeah, all right, work for, pouring concrete. and putting
I
in
got two things to add. You didn't mention that when you were upgrading the homes, you decided to put concrete or cement
Oh, yeah.
slab in the crawl
Yeah.
space also.
Yeah, people are really gonna like it. So what happened again, it all happened about 3 weeks ago when Phil and I, like, I can't remember, we talked about this before, but so Phil and I went down to meet this Fedcor. And they are a first-class operation. And when we were walking in, you always hope things go good, but you didn't know. And both Bill and I were thinking, we'll see what we actually see. And what we saw was a first-class operation, everyone very nice, awards out the kazoo. And we left knowing that we had a really good operation that's gonna take care of us. And then that sparked this inquiry. I was getting prices back from structural steel that were just ridiculous, just really high. Even from people I knew, I couldn't believe about the erection numbers and the actual cost numbers. And then we didn't think initially that we could do it all with Fedcor Nucor. And then we had this time where we could, and then it was like $1 million to $1.5 million. We're like, wow, it just happened in a couple of days. And then once that was there, then I really said, well, what's the smart thing to do here? And the answer was clearly to upgrade the senior housing. And so when we started, we looked at, okay, what does that mean? What are some things we can do? And we put concrete floors in the crawl spaces with sumps. And so when you go down there, some of them are basically what I call a Michigan basement. For plenty of people, you can just walk right down there. And then we're building, just a set of basically a heavy duty ladder for each area. Now granted, the occupant might not be able to crawl down there, but whether it's an assistant or a nephew or a son or daughter. And so we've just radically changed the usable area, and made 800 square feet of storage that's gonna be nice and dry and conditioned and also, both from a hot cold standpoint. So yeah, that's gonna be, I think as people use these houses, they're gonna love, this finished product.
I did have somebody ask me a couple weeks ago again, I know I brought this. I asked you this, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, about a place to wash our vehicles, our home delivered meal trucks. And if I'm not mistaken, you said you'd have to have a separate septic and that has to be emptied every once in a while.
Yeah,
Would you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I thought about that. So we have 2 stormwater detention basins, okay? And their job is, so if you have a big downpour, all of our water goes into the storm sewer in a rapid rate, and then it accumulates temporarily in these detention basins and then dissipates out it's called an agricultural discharge rate. So it's just the overall average rate that water would just naturally go across unimproved ground. And so when you're dealing with detention basins, you can't knowingly put in certain pollutants, right? So I couldn't, just as an extreme example, I couldn't just change my oil in my truck, let it drain onto the asphalt and then drain into the basin. That's 100% illegal. Now, it gets greater, right, as you go down the line. So, what activities can you undertake and legally discharge that into the basin? So if you were just using a power washer, right, to rinse off your vehicle, then that would be allowed without any kind of, but when you start ever mentioning the word car wash, then suddenly you crossed a real threshold and just exposed a whole bunch of rules that require a whole bunch of stuff. But so, my thinking is that, the way the budget is looking now, we should be able to afford a very nice power washer. And then to have a hot water pipe, a hot water hose bib. So now your power washer is running hot water. And then there's clearly a spot that would be, a good spot to rinse off your vehicle. And if you were just rinsing off your vehicle, I can't imagine that's gonna be a problem. But it's not a car wash.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
And one last thing, people don't realize, unless they were around when we were first presented with kind of a site plan, that the whole area where the homes are, originally a site plan, that was all gonna be cut down trees, and part of the senior center was gonna be back in that corner. So when you go see all those trees that were saved and how it's a nice, all that would have been leveled. There would have been no trees at all there. So it's tremendous seeing how that's gonna look compared to that original.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's gonna be beautiful. It took a long time. I kind of think about how many weeks. It was probably 8 weeks where Frank was back there cutting some dead trees and I'd walk by and come up with these different things. And then we'd find, well, there's 2 or 3 dead trees and 1 good tree, so we clear that. And then these spots just kind of opened up, but we basically saved every single big tree, every apple tree, and every large deciduous tree. And then if you look at it, what you'll see next time on the site plan, no one would ever draw that, right? It looks like this funky hook, it looks like, yeah, someone just threw 8 little sheets of paper up in the air and they landed on a thing. But the cool thing is, every house looks out to woods, and yet every house on the front is exposed to the neighborhood. So it should just be a perfect kind of blend of being part of it, if you want to see everybody, but if you just want to enjoy nature at the back. Every bedroom looks out to the woods, and I think each person, ever family or couple, whoever ends up occupying these things are gonna be quite happy, you know. I know everyone that goes out there everyone's like, hey, can I get one of these, you know, so. Anyhow.
No other questions, we'll move on. Thank you very much for the update.
Back to it.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the NEMSCO representatives.
Hi, so just a couple of things I will update you on, and Wendy, I don't mean to step on your toes if you're gonna talk about this, but last week we did hold a meeting in Altoona about the case that is coming through the area. I hope you've all heard about this. There is a case in the Altoona area that covers some of Altoona County, Altoona, the tip of Oscoda County, Sheboygan, and Montmorency. And so we had the individual Roger Meyer from Presbyterian Villages, who is working, heading up that project, come in and speak to some of the COA directors, in case they had any questions. And so I think that went well. I'll leave that to Wendy to say, to answer any questions, any fears you might have. He just talked, it's very new into the process, so things haven't been finalized, but talked about partners and contracting and roles between each other and how that will work. He has also invited the COA directors to come and visit their facility in Mount Pleasant. So Lori will be working on scheduling a visit if anyone is interested in joining that. And you as board members, if you have interest, let Wendy know, because you can come along too, if you would like. And the other thing that I'll just mention is funding, because the federal government hasn't settled on a final budget yet. We did hear from the state that they are planning towards the end of the week to hopefully get us 1 more month of funding out while they can. And so we will turn that around as fast as possible, and probably in a couple weeks then. Any questions for us?
Okay, sounds wonderful. That's all we have for the NEMSCO representatives. Okay, we'll move on to Carolyn. Would you like to give your commission?
Mr. Chairman.
Your light's not on.
Yeah.
Why is it? Push the button on. Push the button.
This one. Nope. This one.
There we go. Couple quick brief things. I don't know if you all are aware of it, but it is a zoo at the county building. We invited, I say this tongue in cheek, We invited 250 of our nearest and dearest friends to come yesterday morning. About 30 of those were excused from jury trial. Another 30 or 40, it was guests, would be no-shows. And the no-shows end up with a bench warrant put out for their arrest because they didn't follow what the court order was. And the rest are in the process of being narrowed down to 14 people that will be jurors for the murder trial that will start as soon as the jury has been fully seated. So you can imagine, it's probably fair to say we had 180 to 200 people in the county building yesterday. And I have to acknowledge that the entire staff, both the county building staff and the courthouse staff, they did a phenomenal job. We now have a holding cell, which is what everybody wanted, a holding cell in the county building, and which is where there are a lot of rules that the individual who's being charged has that they get to do it, and I'm sure you're familiar with a significant number of them. They get to be in the courtroom when things are being, during the testimony of those, whether they're pro or con. And there are a lot of times that the law says the individual being charged must be able to, I don't know if they can weigh out on that. I don't know, people thought about that. They may not want to hear all. Anyway, as I didn't even go to the office this morning because the parking is, St. Anne's parking lot is full. They're parked all over. But very important trial, it's a murder trial, which is most unfortunate. But I feel confident that Tom will, that our prosecuting attorney will do well and see that he wins his case. Two other quick things that come from the district health monthly meeting, pieces of information that I would share with you. The one I found very interesting, people who wear hearing aids, not that I knew it as I do, but people who wear hearing aids are 65% less apt to fall if they wear them consistently. You hear, if you close your eyes, you can sense how large the room is that you are in. And that's because of your hearing. And so you can sense if it's large or small, you sense how crowded it is, you sense a lot of things. And that is through that hearing, through the fact that you've got your hearing aids on, and hopefully they're working well. So if you've been prescribed with hearing aids, according to this article, you're wise if you go ahead and use them consistently, not just on and off when your kid says, "You forgot your hearing aids, Father." So for safety. The other thing, COVID is beginning to come back with vengeance. Please be very careful. Back to washing your hands more than you might normally. And if you have a cold, please think about wearing a mask if you go out. I'm an anti-masker. I would be the first to acknowledge that. And I had COVID, but I don't want to do it again. And I don't want any of you to have to do it either again or have it for the first time. It's not a lot of fun. So please be very careful washing your hands. I know 2 senior living homes that are on lockdown. People have to stay in their rooms food is brought to them. And they will probably be on lockdown 3 to 5, 7 days maybe. So let's make sure we don't have any here.
Okay.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to executive director's report. Wendy, would you like to?
As Carolyn was stating about the trial, I do have one employee, Robin, who got called to jury duty. So there's a possibility, I mean, she was off yesterday, today. And if she were to get chosen, it could be up to 3 weeks, she said. So just a FYI that we do have an employee at the zoo, as Carolyn would say, at the zoo. And with that being said about Robin, she has been promoted to the in-home service coordinator, which she's pretty much moved into the role, just hasn't moved her desk back. We're in the process of interviewing for the front desk. So I've got a couple of really good candidates so far. And we've been interviewing for another DCW worker. We've been starting part-time with our nurses doing all of the assessments. We're getting a lot of new clients and clients that now that they're going into the homes, doing them, are finding that they're needing more time than what they've had before, so. And then the other thing is we were trying to increase the cost of meals, which a lot of the COAs in the area have already done. We've been working with NEMSCA, Kelly, and there's a process to increasing the cost. So first off, we had to do a survey with the congregate dinners and send a survey out with the home delivered meals. And about 95%, I would say, have agreed to increase the cost. So then our next step is presenting it to the board, and we have to have something in the minutes stating that you've agreed that we could do the increase. Then we're going to have to submit that, a copy of the minutes and the reasoning, which most all of the COAs are, it's a hardship because food costs have increased so much. So once we get the minutes from the board and approve, well, if you approve it, we can submit that to NEMSCA, and hopefully we'll be able to increase. We've asked to increase our 60 and under, or I'm sorry, 60 and over meals to $4 from $3, and then under 60 from $6 to $7. So $1 each person. And then another thing is Patty has submitted the second download of receipts that are required for the new building to the state. That was done a couple weeks ago, and so she keeps them in groups, so I'm not sure when the next batch will have to be sent. I think it's kind of like quarterly, so. And then we are also getting prepared for our audit, which is gonna be the end of January. Stevenson did come in on November 10th to go over some preliminary things. And then I received the letter stating all of the stuff that they'll be requesting when they come in January. So Eddie and I will start working on getting all of that stuff together. They'll be here the last week of January. And that's about it that I have. And I think Hope and I went to, as you got mentioned, to a meeting up in Alpena last week about the PACE program. It was very interesting, very exciting for the communities. And Lori's planning a trip for the COA, so it should be fun. That's it, that's all I have, yep.
At one point, I was under the impression that the senior center had to up its age to 62 and older. Am I not seeing something? Because I thought it was 62 when you said 60.
Everything is 60 that I'm
60?
aware of.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, I was just curious about that. Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
You mentioned, food bank, did you ever look into that?
I talked with Courtney, who was our representative from northeastern, is that how you say it, Northeast Michigan Food Bank. And due to the fact that we no longer are affiliated with any type of food bank, the pop-up, anything like that, we are allowed to have an emergency food pantry, which we have here. And it's basically through ACCOA. It's not affiliated with NESCA, it's not affiliated with the food bank. So she said that we can supply, if somebody comes in here and needs food, we are able to supply them with a box of food. So we can keep a small food bank going on our end.
But we can't order, food for a kind to eat, they look amount.
You mean like
What
using,
used to pour all this stuff out and that. When the kitchen orders food for the kitchen, and they prepare it for the congregation. And the food, meals on wheels. And I got a pretty good sized trailer. I used to go to that, church just north of the light there and pick up 3 or 4 pellets and bring it back here for the kitchen there.
oh, I see what you're saying. You're saying, can we get food from the food bank for the kitchen? Yes, we technically can. We don't have an active account with the food bank anymore, but if we wanted to activate our account back, we could order stuff for the kitchen. From my understanding, we could order stuff for the kitchen, just like we order stuff from Gordon Foods, we could order it through the food bank.
Okay, thank you. We have nothing else. We'll move on. Board officers, reports. Because I'm new on board, or new in my position, I should say. I don't have anything at this time. Doris, you have anything?
I do have one question. Do we have anybody, and Wendy probably can answer this, to follow up on that Harrisville property? I know was advertised, I think somebody said. Have we heard anything at all on that?
I know, I mean, I've talked to Phil about it, I know that it's for sale, and I don't know if anybody's made offers or anything like that
They had,
recently.
they did say they had a couple of clients that looked at the property and haven't got back with them, or have got back and denied it. He recommended dropping the price a little bit. I told him, do what you gotta do to sell it. I'd like to get out from under it, even if we sell one lot and throw the other one in as a bonus, but, it's in the realtor's hands, and we owe him nothing until it's sold, and he said then he takes his commission, so he's doing his job, and it's all through the state on Zoom and everything, so
What are we asking for it?
20,
We only paid 10, so can we come down?
he
maybe?
recommended 20 to start,
Really?
and
Okay,
then he said he'd come down, so, yeah, it's whatever,
whatever we can get.
correct,
Yes, I agree.
because it's, there again, the assessed value is right out of the, not even, they got 152,000, I think it was, if I remember right, evaluation, that's what they said it was worth. And we only got, I think we paid a little under, I think we paid just over 98. And then he ups it and nothing was done. And the tax auditor there, he has one taxable value, I believe is 54,000, which makes it 108,000. And he has one at 12,000, which makes it 24. So it's like 132,000 if I do math in my head right. But, I told him to give us 70,000. If he thinks it's worth 132, he should be able to give us 70,000 and he'd still be ahead of the game and he wouldn't do that, so. I think we have to go to the December, tribunal. So there again, I just think it's ludicrous for him to, and I'm not 100% sure on the law, but I'm pretty sure that until we sell that piece of property, I didn't think they were allowed to increase it that percentage wise. I mean, we only paid 89 or 9,800 for it, a little over. So I would think both lots would be worth even 10 grand. I didn't think they were allowed to go 132,000 for both lots. I think it's ludicrous, I think, but anyway, we will go to the tax tribunal and set up
See what we can do.
see
Good.
what we can do.
So, it's, man,
Sure.
it's my understanding then that you need to talk to somebody needs to tell the real estate to go ahead and drop it to the 10,000. So we can get out from underneath it. He's not just gonna do that without being told, so. Would one of us, or
Yeah, that's North 45 there, Johnson Close, who's got it listed.
right, he's my
And
neighbor,
Jen.
do you wanna talk to him or?
If
would
he's
you
your
like me to?
neighbor.
Okay, I will do that.
Okay.
If everybody's okay with just getting out from underneath it, so we don't have to keep continuing to pay for it?
Do we need a motion for her to do that?
I believe we did one several months ago.
Okay,
I will talk to John today then.
I have, one other, request, I guess. You're gonna need a little bit of time, but could you make a list of our committees with the names and phone numbers for us?
Robin has it downstairs, it's on the wall. Robin has it downstairs on the wall. I'll show it to you before we leave.
Okay, I'd like to get a copy of it though to take home. Okay, thank you.
Good, we'll move on. You done?
I got one
Thank you.
Question. What about the vehicles down there? Yellow truck, the van.
If I could answer that, I did talk to Wendy this morning about some suggestions that someone made, and they're gonna, between her and Hope, they're gonna put it on, eBay and Auto Trader and all these things on the internet, and put on there the year, the mileage, and all the information that they need, and try to sell them that way.
Did they say the price on each one of them?
Pardon?
Did they say anything about what we're gonna ask for?
I'm not real sure if they put that on there. They haven't done it yet, so you could maybe talk to Wendy about
We
it.
got quotes on prices back this summer, like right before or around the time I started, so we have that. I would ask if we could at least keep the Traverse, the car, because the nurses have been driving that to do assessments because it's a lot cheaper for them to drive that car than to pay them the mileage that it would cost us for them driving all over the county. It's been used, Hope and I drove it when we went to the food conference in Grand Rapids, which it was like $50 in gas versus what it would have been several $100s in mileage to drive. Joy's driven it to conferences, so I just think that is a beneficial vehicle to keep.
Because they're beneficial, keep, but like that truck, that's not beneficial whatsoever. And I
Yeah.
know, someone told me that the transmission,
Well, until you drive it and take it to a mechanic, and we wouldn't know for sure, but.
Can you put on there, as is?
Sure. No worry,
I think a used vehicle is normally as is, I mean. It would be the buyer's responsibility to have it checked out.
And I do have the years and the amount that Alcona Motors gave us,
Oh, okay.
so.
How much was that? How much did the Alcona Motors think it was worth?
Well, depending on which one, would you like,
The truck,
for the big yellow
the
bird,
big yellow bird.
we paid 5,000, they think we should get 5,000.
With a better
Maybe a
transmission,
little more, but
with a suspect transmission.
no, that's just them looking at it and
I think
Check
that's
it.
just hearsay. I don't know, I mean. I don't know if it's true, like, it really hasn't been driven
Right.
much, so. I don't know that Alcona Motors said it was the transmission, it's just scuttlebutt around that people have been saying that, so.
We don't know the origin of that rumor.
Exactly.
right. But that's why I'm thinking as is, sell this stuff as is, or whichever ones we decide to sell it as is, and then if the buyer wants to take it and have it checked out. But we're paying, full coverage on these vehicles.
has the money being wasted,
There.
Okay, if we don't have any other discussion, we're gonna move on to treasurer's report and secretary's report.
I realized the treasurer's report was not in your packet, so I apologize. That's why I left to have this done. So this is the treasurer's report.
I don't have to do the report, that's again.
So that got broken down into our working funds and basically, and the new building project funds. So separate. In the working funds, the money in New York Life is for the most part in CDs. As is most of, for right now, the New York Life building project funds are in CDs. Some of them mature here at the end of November because they've had a 6-month CD. So I have to get with Andy, see how much he anticipates needing per month for the next 3-4 months and stagger the CDs so that we try to get as much money as we can until he uses it. But if you notice at the very bottom, the new building project funds, we still have 5,400,000 and change. And we've spent 1 million and almost 1,100,000. So that adds up more than the 6.25 million we were granted. That's because the interest we've made. So, you know, it's one of those things. The longer we can keep it making some money, the better. And on that note about as treasurer, I did speak to our lawyer who is in the process of assisting doing our new bylaws. And he recommends secretary and treasurer be a separate individual. So I will not be treasurer unless somebody wants to take over secretary, or vice versa. I will be secretary, somebody wants to take over treasurer, but our 2018 bylaws, which we're going by, are particularly stringent as to how you get new bylaws. So that's what happened. They made new bylaws, but they were never passed. They were never initiated. So he's having to work out how that's going to be, that new bylaws are actually adopted, in which case, you know, we're still going by the 2018, but so whoever wants to be secretary or treasurer, whenever, I won't be both, come the new bylaws.
I would like to see Dr. Turek stay on as the finance, as the treasurer, because just talking with, just doing all these numbers and keeping all these numbers straight is really a job. I know you put a ton of time into that. I would like to ask Pam if she would be secretary.
No, Bob's great secretary, and Roland is the treasurer. Anybody on your finance committee is the one that does the funding. So yes, you work with a financial advisor, but your committee does that. So I would suggest Bob stay where he is and Roland pick up where he left off.
Okay.
You know, it's as soon as he gets the bylaws done, you know, then we have to go through the process of getting them ratified. But in which case, just to give you a heads up, I will not be both once we get the new bylaws ratified. And he's making some other changes there that, you know, to strengthen our purpose as to what our purpose is here in our bylaws, so that it kind of got questioned as to what our, you know, who are we serving and why are we serving certain individuals. So he's strengthening some of those things. And that's all I have for treasurers and the secretary's report. Nothing.
Strengthening Bob's position as secretary and what he has done in this last year has been tremendous and much more valuable. Anybody can work with the financial advisor and make this happen. I would be on the committee and work with them and feel good about that, but I think Bob has the rapport with the attorney. He's familiar with the things we've been going through and where we're at, and to shake that up just doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying don't be rude. I'm just looking out for what I feel is best.
I agree with that too. Okay. Anything else, Bob?
Not as treasurer,
Okay, what about secretary?
not as secretary.
All right, so we'll close the reports for that. We'll go committee reports. Anybody has anything on committee reports? I'll entertain them.
I have the report, the finance report. I can do that. If the building project wants to go over, give a report first, that's fine. Otherwise, if you give me maybe 10 minutes, I can go over this financial report that you've all gotten. The financial report was made up. We asked our auditor, our accountant, Stevenson, to take the information from the last 5 audits, yearly audits, and strip out all the language they put in. You know, those audits are 20, 30 pages long, and your eyes kind of glaze over. So we asked them to just take the numbers for the last 5 years and put them together so that we can really see, you know, what's what. So if you give me about 10 minutes, I'll explain. The first box up at the top is basically just the revenues. Okay, where do we get Stevenson or the audit? They call it our sources of support. Whether you want to call it revenues or sources of support or credits or inflows, however you want to put it. For the last 5 years. If we go by 2018, they break it down into the various sources of our revenue: property taxes, in-kind contributions. In-kind contributions are what people give us or companies give us that's not cash. They're donations items, but they're not cash. They can't be used to pay bills. They can't be used to pay salaries. And yet they're assets that somebody gives us. Grants, those are the NEMSCA grants that are all, as far as I know, all of the funding is in the form of grants and awards. So whoever's our executive director will write grants and NEMSCA will give them awards. So that's that. Interest income, self-explanatory, investment income, program income. That's how much we get from the programs we run. It's important to remember that we wouldn't have programs without property taxes and NEMSCO funding. So any funding coming as a result of somebody donating for a congregate meal or a home delivered meal or an in-home service, we wouldn't get that money unless we were providing the service, and we have to have the money to provide the service. So I consider that really part of the property taxes and the NEMSCO funding, but they total it all up. And for instance, 2018, you'll see the number 674,000. Okay, that's what they said was our revenue in 2018. You drop down to the next box, they break it down into a percentage. So they take the property tax number, that's property tax, that's our millages, and they divide it into the total, and they come up with, we're 54.96%, almost 55%, relying on property taxes for our revenue in that year. In-kind contributions, such grants, which the NEMSCA funding, almost 28%, and the program income, 12%. So the property taxes and the grants together add up to about 83%. And then you add the program income on top of that. So that's 83% between property taxes and the NEMSCA funding. The next box down is where they strip out some things that are oddball, that you can't use, that you can't rely on every year, or you're not going to, can't be used to pay salaries or bills, like in-kind donations, or the PPP loan forgiveness. That comes in one of these other future years. But basically, they strip out anything oddball, and it brought our income down a little bit. The fourth box down is they recalculate on that new number what the percentages are. And so there it bumps property taxes up to 57%, 56.96. Does that make sense? So the first box is our revenue. The second box is they put percentages. The third box, they strip out oddball things that are only one time that's going to happen, let's say. The fourth box, they put a new calculation for percentages. And the fifth box is basically our bills, our expenditures. And in that case, they strip out in-kind contributions. In-kind contributions, not an expense. If somebody gives us something, it can't be an expense. They strip it out. And so the last number, the 619,000, that's what we basically spent. And depending on how you figure how much we took in money-wise, which is 650,000, if you go up to the third box, that's how much extra we had, and that went into savings. So that's an example of 2018. We spent less than we took in. We put a little money aside. 2019, if we go to the next column over, the oddball thing, the difference is that we went up $100,000 in property taxes. So we got $100,000 more in property tax. Whether that was a millage raise, no, it was something else. The increased value of our properties in the county. So we got a little more money. When the second box, you look at what that does to our percentage. Now we're at 62%. We're reliant on property taxes for our income. NEMSCA grants 24%. Program income went down to 8%. Down. 2020 is when things start to get a little funky. So our property taxes are 477,000, but you see what happens below that? You see in-kind contributions of 1.275 thousand, 1,275,000. So we're under the first box, under 2020. Does everybody see that? You know what that is? That was food from Food Bank of Michigan. Food Bank of Michigan donated that food to us. Then we distributed it right back to people. But the way our auditor puts that in, they put that in as a revenue, that we got revenue instead of just food that we had to redistribute. That's not money, 1.275 million, that we could pay salaries or home delivered meals or whatever. That's just food that Food Bank of Michigan gave us.
Would be just a pass-through, shouldn't it?
I'm sorry,
Should be just a pass through. It shouldn't be.
it's not how they did it.
Income.
But look what this does to you. Go down 2020, the second box. Now, because they added that into revenue and it made it look like in the first box, the total revenue, we went up to 2.164 million. Look what it did to the property. There in 2020, the second box, it looks like property taxes are only 22% of what our income or what our revenues are. Well, we all know that our reliance on property taxes did not go down in 2020. We still rely on property taxes to pay home delivered meals, pay salary, congregate meals, in-home services. But because they put all this in-kind contribution into revenues, now it looks like we're only 22% reliant on property taxes. And you can see how this could be easily misread or misinterpreted. Somebody could say, ACCOA is only 22% reliant on property taxes. And they could go to the newspaper or the radio station or the TV station and say, ACCOA is only 22% reliant on property taxes. And if the newspaper or the radio station didn't quiz them and say, take this into context, why is that? Now that gets out to the public that ACCOA is only 22% reliant on property taxes. So keep this in mind when we go to the other years. The grants went way down that year, percentage-wise also. Look what happens when you go down to the third box, when they strip out in-kind contributions and NEMSCA grants, 2020, they stripped that out, and our total revenues was only $30,000 more than it was the year before in 2019. So when you take out this aberrant number, this one-of-a-kind huge donation of in-kind contributions, our actual revenues were only $30,000 more than they were the previous year. Do you see that third? Go down the fourth box in 2020. When you strip out that in-kind contribution, now look what it does. Property taxes are 62% of what our income is, just like it's been in previous years. Grants, NEMSCA grants, 25%, just like it's always been. If you add those two together, that's 87%. Program income, 8%. So you get that, you're about at 95% of our income. But you see how somebody could take in a hypothetical situation could say, oh, they're only 22% reliant on property taxes. It's not the case at all.
Is the Stevenson willing to rework those numbers for us?
We talked about that at the next audit, we're gonna, they said they were using standard accounting rules, and we just said, look, that it's too easily misread, or somebody could misinterpret that too easily. So when they come in January or February, I've talked to them already about how are we going to phrase this. But I think that's why they did this also, to make this clearer as to, okay, look, they might have said that in an audit that we were 22% reliant on property taxes. That's not the case at all. For our salaries, home delivered meals, congregate meals, in-home services, nothing has changed from 2018 to 2019. Go to 2021, first column or the fourth column, first box. Property taxes went up to 833,000. That was due to a millage increase. That's almost 500,000 more, 450,000 more than it was in 2018. Almost 400,000 more than it was in 2019, a huge increase. In-kind contributions with Food Bank of Michigan again, grants, NEMSCA grants, interest income, investment income. All right, that's $119,000. Well, let me go back to 2020, where that's 23,000. What happened in May of 2020 is at the end, September of 2019, we had about $700,000 ACCOA. Part of that was in a CD that came due in May of 2020. What they did is they put that into the stock market. The rest of if you remember what happened in 2020, the stock market crashed. The Dow Jones, when they invested it in 2020, it was at 24,000. Now it's at 36,000, something like that. It's up 40%. They happened to catch the exact bottom of the market when they rolled over this CD into the stock market, and it gave them an income of $23,000 in 2020, and the stock market continued to go up in 2021. So they got $119,450 of investment income in 2021. Down below that, do you see that PPP loan forgiveness? Well, that was during the pandemic where you filled out paperwork, you gave it to your bank, they gave you a loan to fund your employees, and then the government forgave that loan. So we had a $69,000 loan forgiven by the government. A one-time thing, happened at most employers who were smart did this exact thing. I'm glad we did it. Come down to the second box in 2021, property taxes. Now, without that huge in-kind contribution, now it's up to 49.89%. Drop down, the third box, when you strip out in-kind contributions, investment income, PPP loan forgiveness, our income went up, revenues went up to 1.129 million, about 400,000 more in 2020. That's what the property tax, we got 400,000 more in property taxes. That's why we have 400,000 more in revenue. The fourth box down in 2021, now look what happens. Property taxes, millage, 73.82%. That's how much, when you strip out that in-kind contribution and that PPP loan, that's the real number. The fourth box is how much we are reliant. I want everybody to realize we are absolutely reliant on millage and property taxes. We would not function without millages and property taxes. There would be no way. The grants, when you strip out, they were down in 2021. Why? I don't know. 2021, 2022, if we come to the top here again, we got 861,000 in property taxes. In-kind contributions. Go down to investment income. Do you see where it says that? That's negative. We lost $173,000 in year. So we made 23,000 in 2020, made 119 in 2021, gave it all back and more in 2022. So we ended up, I want you to get this, in the last 3 years we reinvested in the stock market, we lost about $30,000. And this was at the same time the stock market, the Dow Jones, went up 35%. How did we lose $30,000 when the stock market went up 30–40%? Well, our previous stockbroker didn't give us a satisfactory answer, and that's why we switched to go to investing in CDs. But that, you look above that, the interest income in 2022, only $124. They didn't shift anything back into CDs or into something safer. It all got stuck. It all got stuck in the stock market. Went up in 20 and 21, way down in 2022. Second box, look at where the percentages are. Property taxes, 61%. 61% is right in line with what it was in 2018, 2019. Grants, 16%. Come down to the fourth box, 2022, when you strip out all the oddball things, the one-time things, we're 69.56% reliant on millage. That's low, that's higher than it was in any other year except 2021. 2021 and 2022, we have been more reliant on property taxes than we were back in 18 and 19. We are more reliant on property taxes as of last year, September of 2022, than we were back in 2018, 2019. Anybody or any person who says anything different is incorrect. So I would like you all to consider the fact that if it's been put out in some way that we are not as reliant on property taxes or NIMSCA funding, it's completely untrue. The numbers are here. I'll be curious to see what our next year audit that's coming up January and February, what it says. Long-term, due to property taxes, the grants from NIMSCA, and our program income, that's 95 to 97% of our income. If we didn't have the grant funds, and we didn't have millages to run our programs, we would be out of business. So I think it's important to know and to pass on to the public, if somehow, some way, they've gotten the idea that we are less reliant on property tax millages, I think it's very important that we need to put that out there because we absolutely could not function without that funding.
I have a question. Isn't it, a good idea, I guess, to change auditors every 5 or 6 years? Because the auditor, I'm assuming, should have caught that money for that food came in but went right back out, that it wasn't to support ACCOA. So wouldn't it be a good idea to change auditors once in a while?
Don't change because he did it structurally in the auditing world. This was not an inappropriate way. I'm not saying it was the most appropriate, but it wasn't an inappropriate. It wasn't a wrong way to do it.
It's just prone to being misread or misinterpreted, that information. That's why once we saw this, it did not make sense. That's why we had them strip those strange things out. And the fourth box down there is what really shows how reliant on what sorts of funding. But yes, so I think you're exactly right. I think you are supposed to you're supposed to switch auditors.
Because the auditor told me that they can only audit what we give them. And if we don't give them the information, they don't know the information.
Absolutely.
So if a new auditor would come in and they would say, well, this doesn't really look right, I need some more information, or, you know, if they're.
A good auditor would do that, whether they're old or new. One of the things that we did at the county, if I may, I understand where you're coming from, Doris. We were concerned with that same thing. And we asked Anderson Chapman to have a different team come out and do the audit. Different set of eyes, same company, but different set of eyes. And we felt that was advantageous. And I think if you wanted to, you could do the same thing.
Well, we maybe could consider something like that.
I'm not trying to discourage you from using another auditor, but I'm also not, I don't want to push you to another.
Right.
The other thing is, you're really in a transitional stage right now. And there may be some merit to hanging on to that history that they have developed with you.
Well, for instance, this came up in the last several months when Wendy and her team found out that numerous things hadn't been submitted to NEMCA. That would an auditor pick that up? Well, it'll be interesting to see when we get the next audit to see one of these years, how our grant numbers went way down in 2018, 2019, and 2020. In the fourth box, we averaged 24 to 28% NEMSCA funding. Then you look at 2021 and 2022, and this is after all the garbage is stripped out. We're only at 16.28% from them and 16.74. Why did our grant funding, the amount of our money come in, go down in those 2 years?
Because your property tax went up.
We got $400,000 from property taxes.
However, it'll be interesting to see, now that we know that they helped her get everything back, it'll be interesting to see this next year what happens also. It'll be interesting to see those numbers, the top line numbers and the bottom line numbers also. It'll be interesting to see.
If I may add to that, you know, like, if I remember correctly, the reports wasn't being submitted properly to NEMSCA also. And now that we went back to having the permit, report submitted, and NEMSCA's been over backwards for us, thank from the bottom of my heart. It should reflect on our next audit, I would believe.
Your next audit may be skewed because all of a sudden you've got this revenue coming in that you did the work for, but you didn't get the money, and now so you may have to go another year out to begin to balance things out.
Correct, but if the auditor that looks at that says, okay, this is actually they go back to 2021 and 2022 and say, this money is the money that should have been coming in had the reports been done properly. It may not reflect quite a huge amount that looks like we've got in income. I don't know if that's correct.
Well, to some degree, so I'm just gonna make a comment on a couple of things that, concern some of the NEMSCA grants. Two reasons why maybe some of the income may have went down. One, there's always funding flexibility, so we know we're not always level. But then two, there's a competitive bid process in part of it. So some of your grants are awarded on 3-year basis. That's your homemaking and personal care and some respite. But then annually, there are competitive grants to bid on that ACCOA, it's their opportunity if they want to ask for various different grants within that. So it depends on how many and what they ask for throughout that and what is awarded through that process. So that may be 1 year they may have had those grants and another year they maybe didn't apply for them. So that's another reason. One of the formulas on nutrition is also based, has a component within it that is based on prior year's numbers. So it also depends on your congregate and home delivered meal numbers as a region throughout the formula. So that may have another effect on your grant funding.
Good. Okay. Is that what you have, Bob?
No. I mean, there's so many things that, you know, why, when the stock market went up 35 to 40%, why, how in the world did we end up losing $30,000 at that time? I don't have a good answer. Neither did our investment person. They had a good answer. So obviously it's not going to happen again. I mean, we're in CDs that are earning 5.4%. So why did it happen? But the bottom line, in 2019 in September, we had about $700,000 according to our audit. Now the treasurer's report that I just gave you, as of it's October, but it's pretty similar to back in end of September. We have $1,150,000. So in that time, we've gone up about $450,000 of assets. Why is that? Well, a large part of it is that the property tax went up $400,000 or more in 21, 22, and it should show that in the next audit. According to the county, we had 3 years where we had $830-some thousand. So our 23 audit again should be $850,000. But even that is misleading. So you say that we're up $450,000, which I would have hoped a bit more. But that's not true because we took out $150,000 small business loan. That went right into our general funds. What it got spent on, who knows? We don't have the paperwork. It didn't get, we have no documentation that it went towards the autos at all. They can't, we don't have that paperwork. So really, instead of being up $450,000, you take that $150,000 out, which a liability that we never had before. We're only up $300,000 in the last 3 years after our millage property tax funds got raised by $400,000 a year. You know, obviously we would have liked to put more of that aside, but well, I have a feeling we're going to need that because Wendy in her most recent budget, she's just accounting for what she has coming up that she knows about. But what if we have to hire a facilities manager before the next budget starts? Or any building project expenditures that are related to more staff? That's going to have to come out of this. She doesn't have that budgeted. She can't know what that's going to be for this year's budget. That would be in next year's budget, but what happens if it happens, beforehand? So, I mean, I'm glad we have what we have, but, and then the only bottom thing is that the non-emergency transport at the very bottom in 2020, 21, and 22, that's how much that lost. That never made money. That lost in 2021, 72,000. In 2022, lost 127,000. And Wendy's team got with Stevenson, it doesn't show it on this, but in 2023, before it was suspended, lost $43,000. So it does show that also. But I hope they're going to make some of the, at least language change in this next audit, or I don't know if they need to put a letter of clarification in, because that's just too hypothetically damaging for somebody to take that and say that we're not reliant upon millage funds or not reliant upon NEMSCA, that we can somehow manage without that. No, we can't. That's 90% of our income, 85 to 90% every year, year over year.
So it's important to have a couple of members of your finance committee, or you can have an audit committee also. Personally, I think you roll them together, but that's a choice you can make either way. But meet with that auditing team when they arrive. Indicate your issues, your concerns, the verbiage that does not properly represent. It's not offensive. It just doesn't represent clearly the message that you need to give. Then you meet with them partway through also, and then your exit interview. And at that exit interview, you can say, this verbiage, really, we don't think it represents quite clearly. Can't change the numbers. It's there. But sometimes the verbiage and the way it's presented. And don't forget, this goes in, it's a forever document. Once it's filed with the state, it's a forever document. So get it right before it goes to the state.
I tend to think that, the verbiage was probably used in the way it was intended when it was given. I think that the information that was given to the accounting company was given to them in a specific way to benefit or to highlight a performance per se. From what I understand of watching what has taken place over the last year. So I truly don't think that, I mean, I've worked with a lot of financial companies, and it is true, they can only work with what you give them. But when I have sat in these meetings in the audience and heard somebody say, well, I'll just tell the accountant to put it this way. The accountant's gonna do what they were told to do. So we need to look at who was the one that was telling them what to do. And as a board, we all know who that was. And I think a lot of responsibility falls on that person.
Would our, we had this money in Edward Jones, they charge us, don't they? Don't they have if we have $1,000 in there, don't they charge a little bit to handle that? So would that be part of the money that we've lost?
No.
Wouldn't be?
They charge $50,000.
That seems like it's pretty stiff, broker fees.
But would it be part of it? I don't know.
Sliver.
Yeah,
They
like
do-
maybe $80 worth.
Sliver.
Really? They don't charge much?
No,
Okay.
very little.
I'd have to go back and look at the statements and see.
Okay, let's move on to, I think that's all. We'll move on to committee reports. As far as building committee report, I've been down to the center and I've been in here. So there's really nothing new as far as the building committee meeting with Andy or anything. He pretty much summarized everything that we went through. Finance committee,
Building committee, we met, the three of us, chairman, me, you, met with Goya to discuss the boiler. And with that, it was recommended that we get a new boiler. I have the first quote, one of the three that I'm asking for. Goya came in and he said that, the problem that he's running into is that nothing here is up to code. So when they do the new boiler, if this is whichever company we choose, that, they would definitely have to bring everything up to code, which would cost a little bit more. The day he was here, he mentioned around 12,000. So far, it's at 15,000, and he needs to come back and do an actual complete list. But that's our first. And as we all are kind of aware, it needs to be handled as soon as possible, because we don't know when it's gonna stop. Could be any day, any moment.
What other firms are commercially licensed to do a boiler?
The next one, I have contacted Weinkauf out of Alpena.
I don't think Gauthier is to do a commercial.
Actually, they might be, but I didn't contact them, because my third one, I worked with Weinkauf through my cleaning business, property management. So I know them, I know their standards, so I went with that, and I have, Andy had suggested Lake Shore. So they'll both be giving me quotes also. But, I did not check with Brian. We could go with a 4. If you'd like me to call him. Anyone?
I'm good with 3. If you wanna call the 4th one, I would be good with the 4th one too. It's, if they're certified to do
Okay.
the commercial.
We have, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a ARP grant from 2021 that was from the generator that the full grant was not used. So we would have to fill out an application and get the quotes, submit it to NEMSCA and the state, if that told me earlier. Because we can use the rest of that grant, but it has to be used by this year, correct? Or we lose it.
So time is short.
So. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, those are ARP funds. I'm not sure exactly what allocation we have left, so it would have to apply to whatever the funding source is that it is. You would allocate based on that funding source. So if it were for congregate meals per se, and this is your congregate meal site, you would have to do the percentage that would be used by congregate meals.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have. Anyone here?
Yeah.
Bob, you have anything for finance committee? Except for what you went over?
No.
Okay. And then we have unfinished business.
No, nominating and governance. We have 3 open positions for board members. And I, was in touch with Robin. She mentioned getting a hold of you, Bob. Did she do that? Okay. She wanted the exact wording. She wanted me to go through that with you. I asked her if she had a template of it, or if I should just go ahead and advertise. So nothing's gone on that way, so I would like to move forward with that. Like, get it into this week's Alcona review. I talked with Dr. Turek and Dolores, and I am also on that committee, so we said that we should move forward and to get a, add into the Alcona review. Also on our webpage. And with that. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So under unfinished business, we'll move down to that one now. Proposal to rent the Lincoln Senior Center. We had a letter submitted to the board. We have a group that wants to rent. It is my recommendation to lease the ACCOA building at 207 South Church Street to Sunrise Christian Academy for reasons stated. We would keep our assets while Southern Christian Academy would pay for maintaining the building. It is an endeavor that would benefit the community. It is a nonprofit organization. I would ask all board members to try to come up with any questions that they may have and send them to our committee or myself. I would also suggest that a contract be written up between two parties by an attorney, ACCs, or the schools. I feel it is important to have everything spelled out for this situation. Sincerely, Pam McKinnon.
Excuse me, did you say rent? This says lease.
That's at least, did I say right?
I think you said rent.
Okay.
Same difference, I
Actually,
guess.
you said lease, but the agenda says rent. And what we had talked about before when it was done, when Lisa first submitted this, is that we would pick up the all maintenance fees and small repairs. And that's what it would be instead of giving you an income, which would not really benefit you as the ACCOA.
So I have another letter, dear ACCOA board members. For over a year, a group of Alcona County residents have been planning to open a private Christian school in Alcona County. We see the need for an alternative to the public school for parents who want to educate their children with a focus on academics and a biblical worldview. To that end, we need a place to start a school. Given the fact that ACCOA will be moving to a new location, we see the potential for turning the current senior center building back into a school, into its original use, which will prevent yet another vacant building in downtown Lincoln. Our plan is to model after a highly successful Hillman Christian Academy and have been working with them on a weekly basis. We are willing to pay the expenses required to maintain the building, such as utilities, groundskeeping, and minor repairs, while the ACCOA retains full ownership of the building. We will also pay for any improvements that may be required by the State of Michigan Department of Education. What we are proposing is this: Alcona Christian Fellowship 501c3 DBA Sunrise Christian Academy enter into an agreement with the ACCOA to use the building for a period of 5 years commencing September 1st, 2024, with an option to renew at the end of that period. We believe the agreement would be beneficial to the ACCOA, the Village of Lincoln, and the residents of Alcona County. We will prepare a contract for the above if the ACCOA agrees. We look forward to your reply. Sincerely, SCA Board President Lisa Turek.
And then there's another letter written from Director Rockhood, Fairman. Says, as a member of the Building and Planning Committee, I was requested to consider the appropriate disposition of the existing senior center building once the new facility is occupied. No criteria were identified when selecting the next owner, no price set. I interpreted this to mean that, quote, best disposition, a thoroughly subjective determination without financial consideration. Please consider this preliminary report, which is subject to change as the situation is better understood. If it is going to be subjective decision, I want to at least acknowledge the factors considered, since the answers to these questions affect what we can do with the building. When giving control of the building to another organization for any reason, is there a need for the financial return for the ACCOA for any reason in any manner? I need help with that one. Would the ACCOA require not only maintaining, having the building maintained and the bills paid, would you require a rental fee? The next one is, are there rules controlling such a transaction? I believe that the state has specific rules for the school. I know, like fire safety and things like that, and we have to use their inspectors and be brought up to code in that way. Can the ACCOA sell the building if they want to? I believe they can. I need help with that one. Can they lease the building to a nonprofit? I believe yes, due to the maintenance would be the lease dollars. Can a corporation or some other self-contained entity within the ACCOA be formed which uses the building? Need help? How would the liability be addressed? We would both carry insurance, the ACCOA and the school would have an insurance policy. Which would be discussed with your existing policy holder to see what, if you can trim it. If you know, since the kitchen's not gonna be being used and stuff like that, it would be, maybe something that could be a little cheaper. We may want to hold off buying boiler for tax considerations if the building is sold. I don't think that we have that option according to, Jeff from Goya. I don't know that we should, put off taking care of the boiler. I think it's been an important endeavor. Is the emergency generator question resolved? Yes. Bill had talked with Andy and, they would be leaving this generator here due to the fact that if you move it to a new building, the, it would void the, warranty. Also, it may not be big enough for the new building. Assuming that none of the above is a hindrance nor anything else that comes along in the next 6 months, in my opinion, the best utilization of the building is one that involves the most members of the community and gives the most useful support back to the community. The establishment of a daycare and preschool academy is the most useful idea I have heard for many commendable reasons. I'd like to stress that the school would be kindergarten through 3rd grade to start. It is a good age range for the facility and minimum modification should be necessary. I don't know Michigan law to be able to suggest the legal path to achieve the best resolution, and it is for the board to define the parameters of the best. This decision should be defined by the legal parameters which govern the ACCOA. Again, submitted by Fairman Rutgers. With my answers in there that I knew.
Okay, so I guess what I would recommend, first of all, is we have to find out what the building would be worth if so. Let's say a realtor come in and measured it everything and everything was done and they said 1.3 million, 1.2 million. Then you go out and you list it to see if you have any interest, any parties interested in the building. And if so, with the interest rates right now, I would think we have a few years before they're gonna come down, or would it be better to lease? So I think those are all questions that, you know, are up in the air right now. We have a little bit of time, but.
Well, at that, I would like to, if you do choose to go that direction, I would say there are many empty buildings in Lincoln, many empty buildings in Harrisville. I would have to question whether, it would be beneficial for us to have the income. Was that talked about in the finance?
What exactly was what talked about?
Was this building, selling this building talked about at your finance meeting? Okay.
No, just that, you know, of course, there's an option. I mean, do you sell it for market value? Do you sell it or give it away for less than market value, like it was given to us basically for less than market value? But here again, how do you know that what is market value? Maybe it was only worth $1 when maybe they wanted to get rid of it because of the expenditures and maintaining it. So, I mean, I think,
We would have paid you $1 to take it.
you know, there's a lot of questions. I mean, I think some of these that Fairman brought up are legal questions that our lawyer would be able to address. In particular, I mean, a lawyer, if this committee and the board thinks this is something that might be worthwhile that the lawyer could talk about making up a letter of understanding or a memorandum of understanding that basically says, okay, here, if we decide to do this, sometime in the future, we might enter into a firm contract. It's not so much of a contract as laying out, it's an interim step before you get to an actual contract.
Let's try it out and.
So that's kind of,
Then do those, see if it is a going concern.
I mean, I don't know the real estate market. I go drive through Lincoln and I see a lot of vacant buildings. I mean, maybe somebody's out there just dying for us to get out of here because they're gonna snap it up. I
right, so.
don't see that as likely, but
Would you all be willing to go with the fact that I would contact my real estate person about the outing? And have her come out and check this out and see what it's valued at. We need to do, we can't wait till it's empty, because if you wait till it's empty, then we're financing 2 buildings. Because you're still gonna have to have your heat, you're still gonna have all your stuff here that you have to pay, the ACCO has to pay for. And you're gonna have overhead over there also. So I don't think that it would behoove us to wait and keep passing this on until, and also I believe the Sunrise Christian Academy would like to have a base. They would like to know sooner than later. So if we could do the memorandum of understanding between the school and the ACCOA, move forward with that, and also move forward with getting an assessed value of this.
would you be willing to talk to the lawyer? I can do it. I mean, because I've been the main liaison for the lawyer, and talk to him and just see about what don't we know? I mean, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And talk to him, and if you, as the committee and the board says this is a potential possibility, then maybe we can talk to him about getting a letter of understanding or a memorandum of understanding that if this group does this and pays these expenses and does this, and we do whatever, the ACCOA, as far as I'm concerned, wouldn't have to do anything other than just you pay your bill, you pay all our bills, and we're not losing money. Would you be willing to do that? Talk to the lawyer? I can do that if you want.
Well, and I will also get a hold of Rebecca. She's a highly rated real estate agent in our area.
Is she from around here?
Covered Lake. She sells a lot of real.
We could even get a couple. We could have Vice come up and do it too. Get a couple opinions.
I'm only gonna work with Rebecca, but if you'd like advice, you can jump on board and go that direction.
I have 2 questions. One, will there be any penalties for us with that generator?
So there's a process that you have to go through, and you have to offer it to your partners, which are the other COA partners and then nonprofit. That's why we get approval from the state funded. So you can't just do that, you have to go through the process. There is a local policy.
I'm sorry, is that a penalty just if we sell it? If the ACCOA still owns this building and it's still our property, is there a penalty if we're not using it as our #1 place? If it's still let's call it what's it called here?
Site, an off-site site.
Yeah, well, what's a security? If there's a snowstorm, what's this called?
Shelter.
Emergency shelter. If it still stays that.
You have to seek permission.
Well,
So it's not necessarily a penalty, it's just a process that you have to go through. Because if the school is a nonprofit, if none of your partners, if none of the approved partners, which I think is the first step, want it or accept it, then you would go to other nonprofits, which I'm not sure if the school would be a nonprofit.
it is gonna be nonprofit, but, we're not really interested in the generator, because if we don't have power, we wouldn't have school. Yes.
And then also the letter just states September 1st, but what if we're not out of here by September 1st? Then what happens? I mean, I don't want us to be getting kicked out of our own building.
That maybe we could use a small portion of, just to start. Like an office or a portion of the gym.
Inside, you know, we're gonna have to keep. First of all, I think we need to contact the attorney. And like Bob said, find out what we don't know. That we don't know.
Okay, I'm willing to do that, but do you think, I guess I have to ask at this point, do you think that I would be the best person to do that? Considering I am working with Lisa and I do want this to be the school. I mean.
I'm married to her, so I don't know if that makes me, I mean, yes, I deal with the lawyer quite frequently, and, you know, he's a great guy, and you can get a hold of him and you can get the answer, and I'm sure he will look into it, and, I think he's probably gonna say, well, is this something that the board wants to do? Does the board see this as a valid option? And, you know, as opposed to selling it or giving away, does the board feel like this is a good option? I guess if we did that today, do we agree that this is a potential thing that we could do that would at least give him, we don't want him to waste his time or waste our money if the board doesn't think this would be something we'd be interested in doing, or at least a possibility.
Oh, wait, are we gonna do a roll call on that? Roland,
Oh, yeah.
are you interested in this happening as a school or not?
We have to do a motion first, no.
All right, well, wait.
We have to do the motion and we have to have a second and.
Go ahead and talk about our other problems.
Is these two the same Christian group? These two letters,
Yes.
they're the same,
Same one, yep.
okay.
Well, I think just, if nothing else, we just have to make sure from a parent standpoint that we've taken everything into account, that, you know, that what's the value of the building, whether it can be sold, whether it should be sold, you know, whether this is a better thing. We might be able to sell it to somebody who wants to use it for, you know, storage of refrigerators. Does that mean we think that's the best use for the community of Lincoln?
One
Does,
thing we have to double check with too is I just heard from NEMSCO. You know, about bylaws, regulations that we have to meet with NEMSCO should we lease it or sell it. You know, with a generator type deal, there's proper paperwork that has to be done.
But not on the building, but not on the building.
Not until, I guess, like the generator and.
But there is other equipment here. that
Correct.
We have kitchen equipment, I mean, there's stuff that we can't just leave here. We would have to offer it to
Yeah,
other COA.
I'm not sure how much you have left on your asset list, but there's, you know, back before my time, there used to be a little bit more of an abundance of funding and you purchase things like your refrigeration and a large washing machine and things like that. So I don't know what's still on your list.
Was there a motion?
is these,
No, not yet.
are these two, this group capable financially of, let's say, replacing the heating system? Or if the well, probably not well, but, I mean, can they financially support this building?
See, that's something that has to be all drawn up by an attorney. What is legally our responsibility and what they would be. Like
So
a
we wouldn't be
negotiation.
able to use the grant for the boiler either, because we would kind of be in the same situation.
So if you fix the boiler, which we know we need. And they sold it.
you would have to ask, I don't make the decision, so if you submit the request, we can, you know, make sure you put that in the request so that you're transparent. And then we don't have to go backwards and. Right. So put it in the request, we'll submit it, you know, if this is an immediate thing that's going to leave your congregate, you know, without heat. Right. That's one thing. Okay.
But even if it had to be paid back, then we wouldn't need the toilet. Yes, we have the money to do that.
I mean, it's something that I've been asking basically for the last year. I mean, one thing is holding up the next thing, which is holding up the next thing. I mean, do we decide to replace the boiler? We know it needs to be done, or are we waiting for somebody else to take that on? And then, well, do we put a new one in if we're gonna keep the building and rent it out? So many questions that sooner or later we have to decide what order. We might not know what order would be best, but we at least have to put a foot forth to say, let's start moving towards what we're gonna do with this.
First thing you need to know is what can you legally do? Are there any state mandates regarding our responsibilities for dealing with this property? Can we sell it? Can we rent it? Can we lease it? Do we want to keep hold of it and let them use it? The law should really govern our next activities. That's why I try to emphasize the paper.
Oh, and someone else interested in it. It might-
Yeah, I
might
understand
be
Cole
better.
is interested to be able to store refrigerators. So it would make a warehouse, although I don't think that'd be the best use for the building. I don't think that would benefit the county as much as using this for some type of educational facility.
I guess we need either a motion to move forward with checking with legal counsel on our letters of intent for this building, what the laws are, what we have to.
I would make a motion for this committee to contact ACCOA legal counsel regarding any legal how to proceed. I would also have them continue contacting real estate agents I think we should get an estimate of a fair market value of what the building is worth.
Good to know.
And I would ask them to reach out to this group and see have a further conversation with them as to what their expectations are of most of the time, if you're a renter, your landlord takes care of everything. I can't imagine that they would expect to have to replace a well or even repair a well. If we still own the building, I would imagine we would be responsible for everything. They are taking care of all of our expenses every month so that we're not losing money on this. I can't imagine that they would want to be responsible to fix a boiler. In that case, they would proceed differently. My opinion, but I wouldn't, if that motion, I'll draw it up differently on paper. Contact the lawyer, contact this group, and contact a real estate agent regarding fair market value.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor.
I second that motion.
Okay, seconded by Kerman. We've had our discussion. Probably should do a roll call vote on that.
Yeah, you have one member that in my eye must abstain. You can't vote on this. Respectfully, I say that.
Yeah, I would recuse myself from that. I think I can make the motion, so can I?
You can vote on it. You may not be able to sleep with her at night, but you can vote on it. And that's a personal thing. I don't want to know about it. Thank you.
But you do not feel like I need to recuse myself?
No, it's just,
I do not either.
Or
I believe Pam may wanna ask. her-
Pam needs to.
Correct,
I'm sure she
yeah.
expects that.
Yes, I do, thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor, seconded, roll call vote, please.
Lynch,
I'm decided. There's other, let me add, I'll give you one. There's a couple walls outside the kitchen there that needs to be repaired. Corner on the garage and some of the roofing on the garage for those, freezers are, that needs to be repaired. At one time, these vents out here, Over Leesburg, and I looked into it to get those repaired, because they're kind of falling away from the building. Now, stuff like that, are we gonna have to fix that all up before we make any deals, or?
I would believe if you sold it, it's gonna have to be fixed. If you lease it, it's gonna have to be fixed.
Did not proceed.
Or if you sold it, they'll just deduct that from whatever you work.
Correct.
Okay, I'll vote yes on that.
Potter,
Yes,
Schlicker,
I don't think, I'm not quite clear on what the motion is.
want to rephrase it, or should I? The one that jumbled up, to have this committee, contact ACCOA's legal attorney, our legal counsel, to see our obligations, as Behrman said, what we don't know. Contact the group to see what their expectations are as far as who would take care of what bills, and to contact a, real estate specialist to get an estimate of the fair market value.
Okay, yes, I'll vote yes.
Do further research, that's how we'll phrase it. All amendment. Schlicker is yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Bachhorst, yes. Turek, yes.
motion passed.
Okay.
We will move on to new business. Pam already mentioned to me about, or to the board, members of 3 new members that, advertise it and see if we can find new members. That's what I had down for new business.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
That's
thought that
fine,
went
no.
under the committee.
No, that's fine.
I'd be curious how long the board wants to advertise. I mean, do we want to continue to run an ad every week until we have a full complement of board members, 9? I mean, I tend to think most people know we have vacancies, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I'm just curious, how frequently do we want to run an ad?
Is that gonna be a election, or are you just looking for 3 board members?
I would think at this time, an appointment would be in order.
Do you want me to put something on our Facebook page?
Definitely.
Okay.
As far as how long we would do that, typically, most things run for 3 weeks, right? I would just say 3 weeks.
Because our next meeting is 4 weeks away, so we could maybe have somebody by in 3 weeks period.
We have a, summer meeting?
Do we have a December meeting?
No,
No? Okay. Nobody. All right.
normally we're right at January now,
Okay.
unless the board wants to have one, but normally we don't.
I wouldn't have a problem with having a meeting.
I have to excuse myself for just a second. If you want to go ahead and do the public comment.
Okay, yes,
If anyone has any comments, public comments, we're limited to 2 minutes. If you would state your name and township, I think.
I'm sorry. Lisa Turek, Harrisville Township. I just want to say thank you for considering the letter that I wrote, and I appreciate the discussion, and I understand, what you need to do going forward as far as working with them and anything else. But I just want to say thank you for at least acknowledging and for discussing it and considering, that I'd like to use the building. So, thank you.
Thank you. Judy?
Judy French, Harrisville. On the school, I think the school is a great idea. My only concern and find out if because of ACCOA being for seniors, if your building can be used for children. You know, you're not serving seniors, and even though it's a different group, it's your building, so I'm not sure if that's like a gray area or how that would really work. Cause you don't wanna be having a program that's for children when you're for seniors. So just make sure that doesn't fall in there. I would ask that you all turn your mics on at the beginning and just leave them on, because you never remember to turn them on when it's your turn to talk. When there's not a ton of people here, it's not as big a deal. I mean, I can hear you. I'm not sure how well the recordings, you know, people who are gonna go back and watch these or try to watch them live, they may not be hearing you at all. So please, please remember to use your microphones. And I just want to say thank you for this in-depth, with all these numbers. And I'm thankful that you explained it, because when I first looked at it, I had no clue what any of it meant. It's quite eye-opening to see certain numbers put in there, and in my opinion, they're put in there to pad numbers and make it look good. But you know, you can do a lot with numbers, and whether it's legal or not to do it, I mean, I'm sure it was not illegal to put the food bank money in there, but is it moral? In my opinion, it was immoral to have that amount of money put in there, like we got all this money. And really, if like the numbers are showing, the percentages of what you need is millage money and NEMSCA money, and the way the numbers were perceived is trying to make it look like we don't need those numbers. And whether it's true or not, because there's a lot of things you hear, but I have heard previously that somebody was trying to get ACCOA out from under the county and out from under NEMSCA. And so seeing these numbers, the way it's true, makes me believe that that was correct. That it was being made to look like ACCOA didn't need the funding from NEMSCA and didn't need the millage money because somebody didn't want to answer to the funding source above. So I appreciate this information. I hope I'm not going over my time, but I just thought of the audit that was, whatever that was called, when, I guess it's been maybe about a year now, but you had that special audit that was coming in. We really didn't get information, like what really was found. Was anything uncovered or found? I mean, we really don't know. And we'd like to, if that information can be shared, we'd like to know that as concerned people of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Bray, Harrisville. On your website, you advertise your Zoom meetings, but the meeting ID and passcode are from September, and they do not work, nor have they worked, even in September. So you might want to consider fixing that, so when people would like to watch that are out of state or on the road, that we could. And we've called, we've been told it would be fixed, and it has not been fixed. So that needs addressed. Number two, although I'm for this Christian Academy, stand behind it. Biblical world thinking or biblical worldview is the most important view. However, and hear my words because they matter. There is an appearance of a conflict of interest because of the board, people on the board that are involved, and the people whose spouses are involved. All for it, but you're gonna have to be careful because there will be people who say it's a conflict of interest, thus go to the lawyer, but the appearance is there, and when those that are opposed get a hold of that, then you've got a whole nother fight on your hand, whether it's true or not, because we're in the age of non-biblical view that says my truth matters and there's only one truth. And so I just want you to be careful. That's a caution. Although I'm for you, it's a caution. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Comment period is closed. Directors and additional comments and concerns. Carolyn?
I haven't explored this because it just came to mind, but. I haven't explored this and it just came to my thought process. But you don't want to think about on a temporary ad hoc basis to have a property management committee to deal with food, to deal with handling this. It might focus that into one place. I mean, somehow, I don't think we think of property management.
It was right now, in my opinion, is we have 6 members. You have 3 members on the building, you have 3 members on the finance, you have 3 members on the. Pretty soon you run out of members, or we need more members on the board. Definitely. And before the decisions are finalized, hopefully we have 4, which would relieve Dr. Turek and Pam. And we'd have 9 members. But like Rick said, we'd have a full board, would eliminate that scenario, hopefully. So that's just my good thing. That's a great idea. Okay. Any other additional comments? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and our next regular meeting will be January 23rd at 10 o'clock to 2024.
I'll make a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
A second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Adjourn the meeting is adjourned. All in favor, everybody. Thank you, Rick.
You want me to make
Very bad.
Well, you tried it.
Yeah.
And do you have another this?
You never brought that up. I don't either.
That's it, legally, remember, the ones to help with the.
Oh, okay, thank you.
By you.
But I'm not. It's important.